What they say with boys and they toys, huh?
Yes. I got some toys. Right.
Can y'all hear me the same?
I hear you damn
Yes, I
good.
can hear you.
Okay, that's
Very
great.
good. Very good. Very
I
good.
had to change some settings on my device.
Oh, really?
Buddy,
Hey. Hey.
Hey.
Hello. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Knowledge and Power Podcast Live. And we are back for another evening of podcasting. Let's see if we get my headsets up. I heard a turtle bucket going.
Okay, hold on.
All right, there we go. That's much better. Now, Trish, can you hear me now?
I can hear you better, yes.
Great. Good. Okay, I'm going to start the show all over again. How about that? No, I'm just kidding. Welcome to Knowledge is Power Podcast Live, everyone. And my name is Tony Renfro, and I'm along with my cast here. And we're going to go this way. We're going to go to the right. Okay. Trish Sure. Hello, Trisha
Hi.
Kim Promo. Perry Busby from Plantation, Florida.
Hello, Beaumont.
Chris Jones. Hello, Christopher. All
from the
right.
real South End.
From the real South End. Speaking of the real South End, I'd like to have a special show with you as the lead host again. We're gonna do, and myself because I'm from the South End.
Come on,
Let's
South
do
End.
a South End special. Let's get some photos and those some slideshows, show some old buildings, old businesses, uh, old people, and let's just talk about the South End. How about that?
I'm
And
definitely for it.
maybe get those from the South End Facebook page, admin to come in and join us, and let's get together and throw a big party for the South End. How about that?
I'm for it. I'm
All right,
totally for
okay.
it.
All right, now I got Mrs. Tracy Stacy. Is it? Uh,
This man here. This man here.
I've got my host, LaDonna Sherwood. Hey, uh, and all to my far right is Terry Roy. How you do, Terry? Okay,
I'm
guys,
good.
listen. We've got a great show ahead of us, and I hope you guys listening or watching it will enjoy it. I'm not at home. I'm not in my home studio tonight, so I hope you can hear me well and see me. Okay. Let's see. We're looking okay. Great. I have loved this deal. I love doing this. Hey guys, also I want you to please go to our new Facebook page, Now She Power Podcast uh, Black Culture page, 365. 365. That means we're going to be posted and educating and learning ourselves and you 365 days of Black history, rich in heritages that we have that we can learn and teach each other. I would want to welcome Beaumont 411 on here as well tonight because I just knew that this is more going to be educated more for that group as well. They can share some of the things because they cannot teach it no more, but we can share among each other about our Black history. The night show topic, Black History 365, with our roundtable panelist, Perry Busby Jr. Perry,
The third, man. Don't put me in junior shoes. I'm too big.
I'm sorry, man. I forgot. I really did. You know what? And did you not know? Were you too young to remember that I was your dad's armor bearer?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't care how
Here,
late
your
or
reverb is high.
I didn't
Okay.
matter. It didn't matter how late I stayed out that Saturday night. I was showing up on Sunday morning.
You know what, Tony?
Hungover. let's move on with the show. All right, I'm gonna change that to the third, okay? And I'm gonna bring on. Wait a minute. Let's see everyone. I've got everyone here. Great. Perry, you're gonna take over. It's your show. Thank everyone for watching us, and we'll be right back with our 30 seconds logo promo, and LaDonna going to bring us into the show, and we will get it started. How about that? As soon as I can find it. Here we go, guys. Welcome to Knowledge is Power Podcast Live with your host, Tony Renfro, and my co-hosts, LaDonna Sherwood and Francis Larkins.
Knowledge is Power Podcast Live starts now.
Speaking of Francis Larkin, where is Francis?
We don't know.
MIA. Okay, great. I'll pick up the phone and I found her. LaDonna, you got it, sweetheart.
Yes, Knowledge is Power Podcast Live is a platform to share important information by educating Southeast Texas African American communities with viable information on health, education, finances, politics, and business. We pride ourselves on keeping our hand on the pulse of this community, letting you know what is going on in and around Jefferson County.
Great. Hey, guys, also, people, drop us a comment. We want to hear from you as well. Knowledge is Power Podcast Live is now on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitter, Apple, iTunes, Amazon Music, and Google Play. Now, again, my introduction to our friend, Terry Busby.
Hey, what's up to my crew? What's up, Beaumont? And what's up to the Knowledge is Power audience? I am excited to have this opportunity to come to you and share. As you know, this has been African American History Month, and I've seen a lot of posts and artifacts of things that I didn't know. And I do want to give a shout out to my good friend Chris Jones, Unc, because Chris inspired me on an idea that I was thinking about when Tony first asked to do this show. And I was thinking, well, what can I do for Black history? Everybody been talking about all these facts. And Chris has been sending me some messages from the diaspora. I mean, people from Langston Hughes to Amir Bakara to, Michelle Obama, anyone you can name. And that inspired me for tonight, what we want to do is look at some what I call neglected wisdom. And so I want to look at Black history from a literature perspective. And I'm saying that because so much of our history is written in books, and so much of our knowledge our elders wrote down, just their aspirations, not knowing it would be a guidepost for us. And I just want to tell you, as I was doing the research for this, it has really been empowering, and I hope that it empowers you as well. First, we're going to start out with folktales. How many of us grew up on folktales? I mean, and that, or what folktales do you remember? Anybody?
When you say folktales, are you talking about, say for an example, like If you lie, the devil gonna pull your toes and this kind of stuff. Are you talking about
Well, no, I'm
when you
talking
sleep?
maybe short stories, or I wouldn't even call them rhymes. But I'll give you a perfect example. You remember Disney used to have that zippity doo dah, zippity yay? All that comes from folktales.
Really?
Yeah. And these from folktales, folktales really derive from really two aspects, both from people of color. Uh, you had you had Africans who had their folktales, which is where we get the griot, and this was how they came together as community and told stories. It wasn't written; most of it was spoken. And then you also had the Native Americans. And in the Native Americans' idea of folklore, it was somewhat metaphysical because people took on different shapes. They became eagles. They became all of these things that represented some greater nature. And when you look at it, once Africans came and we began to mingle with Indians, some of these folk tales began to sort of cross, which is where you get the whole bird rabbit, bird fox. That was taking, some characteristic and putting it into animals such that they could teach a lesson without it becoming so offensive to master and anything else. It became, somewhat of this jocular tale. And so we're going to begin. One of the, we have to credit Zora Neale Hurston and her skills as an ethnographer, her study of these slaves and spending time. What the historian says that we, even as wonderful as Zora Neale can write and create these beautiful pictures, understand something gets lost from the telling to the pen. And so at best, what we've got here is the framework. But it's a great framework, and when you begin to hear about it, I was learning that you kind of hear when you look at these folk tales, it seems as though the Negro is always down and out, and it even went into vaudeville and what we began to see in movies. But that was really sort of a trickster way. They were trying to tell a story without it being so offensive, and once and so you had to listen with a keen ear. You had to pay attention because the lesson wasn't always going to hit you right in your eye. You had to read between the lines. And so that's where you see times where, it looks like master is getting the upper hand, and all of a sudden the slave says something that sounds so profoundly ignorant that master can't do anything about it. And so it begins to teach you also the ignorance of master as well. In a very sly way, they begin to dismantle this impenetrable source who they saw as the Anglo-Saxon. And so they wrote stories. And at the same time, they was telling stories to us about us coming out of slavery. Tony, let's pull the first one up. And I love this story. Zora Neale Hurston wrote a book called Muse and Men.
Okay. Let me go to it.
Yeah, let's start with that one.
Hey, you being messy, big bro.
Yeah.
That good kind.
We got to
like
know, man. What you think first? Let's go to the first. No. Let's go to the cover. No. Yeah, let's start there. Okay, now we'll start. Okay, that's just the cover. Let's start with the first one. We gonna start with remember, use the nigga.
Okay.
Wait a minute. What? Say it again.
Remember, use a nigga. And this was written again. This was a story that was passed along. And the story goes that there was a slave called Old John, and Master told Old John, that John, when times get right, and when John was working in the field, John was working in the field. He saw Master's kids, and they were about to drown. So he jumps in the river. He saves them. Master in turn says, John, if the next crop season is good and you really do a good job, I'm going to let you have your freedom. And so it says, well, Master and John take them to the house. So they all goes up. So they was also glad because the children got saved. So Master told them to make a good crop that year and fill the barn. And then when the laid by the crops next year, he was going to set them free. So John raised so much crop that year that he filled the barn and had to put some of it in the house. Friday came and Master said, well, the day will come that I said I set you free. I hate to do it, but I don't like to make myself out a lie. I hate to get rid of a good nigga like you. So he went in the house and gave John one of his old suits and clothes to put on. So John put on the suit and came to shake the hands and tell them goodbye. The children, they crying. Old Missy, she crying too. Didn't want to see John go, so John took his bundle and put it on the stick and hung it across his shoulder. Well, old John started down the road. Old Master said, John, the children love you. Yes, sir. John, I love you. Yes, sir. And Missy, well, she like you. Yes, sir. But remember, John, you's a nigga. Yes, sir. Far as John could hear him down the road, he was hollering, John, old John, the children loves you, and I love you. The Missy like you. John would holler back, yes, sir. John, remember you was a nigga, though. Old Master kept calling. Him and his voice was pitiful, but John kept right on stepping to Canada. He answered Old Master every time he called him, but he consumed on with his bag. and who want to discuss that?
I'm excited about that one simply because it reminds me about our good friend Jay-Z. Chris, can you help me with the name of that song?
The name of the song that Jay-Z has is called "Still Nigga," and my assumption is, well, he sort of kind of has the same play,
right,
or the same scenario in wordplay, Perry. And he says, so to speak, I'm gonna have to pull up the lyrics on that, man.
The only reason I say that, Mr. Busby, is because we can go from way back then to all the way up to 2000, and the premise of this particular folklore, tale, or story, or article is still being echoed all the way up to this modern time. So not only did Zora Neale Hurston, who wrote this particular piece, but our good brother Jay-Z, I'm making the link between the former and the latter together. We still understand what this is saying, right? We do get it.
Right. No, I agree, and we will find that this thread continues to run deep.
Correct.
I guess I would counter and say that what hasn't happened is that the thread has not been intentional in bringing us together.
Right.
For real. For real, though.
Yeah, and so no, I mean, and it's good, and that's what I'm saying. I think it's great on both hands because you will have someone who is steeped in this literature, not even aware of a Jay-Z, or may have an idea about a Jay-Z, and vice versa, because you will have some young person who thinking Jay-Z spitting fire and doing the first thing, and it's like, no, man, this has been done many times over.
Right.
Right.
So like the lyric says, of course he has a whole bunch in the song, but I guess like the main portion of the song that sounds similar to this, remember use a nigga, is light nigga, dark nigga, faux nigga, real nigga, rich nigga, poor nigga, house nigga, field nigga, still nigga.
Still. So my point was, in this member use a nigga is I can go up to a modern time and that's still
a black president that was still considered to be nigga.
Yeah. I mean, but also let's think about the gap in time. I mean, they're writing this very much in that niggerdom. And how they are responding to it. I think, we gonna get to that later, because that also is something that gets translated in a lot of these narratives, which I think is gonna be funny. We'll talk about it. But one of the things that you see coming out of the slave narratives, especially those that they call the post-antebellum, coming right out of, they just been emancipated, and Reconstruction. Don't get it confused. None of them had anything good to say about it. But when you begin to look in their writings, what they begin to do is take this real fine tune and try to extract some of the greatness that they got out of it without diminishing the whole thing. And that really takes a lot, to have gone through it. And you're going to see how some people who weren't even in slavery began to take this more revolutionary approach to slavery, even though they weren't in it. And somehow began to look at, and I mean, there was always great discussion about, in terms of how we deal with slavery. There were many revolutionaries before Malcolm and Garvey who were saying, listen, they only know if you pick up arms. That's the only way they deal. In fact, we're going to get to David Walker, hopefully tonight, where we talk about that. But you have those who endured slavery and who understood that progress and sometimes takes time, because progress granted for people that's not ready soon falters back. And I guess you can say that about Reconstruction, and maybe say that even about now.
Right. You have a regression.
Yeah. So, and then, okay, let's take a look at these other two, because I think these are really profound, because these are directed really at Black society. Let's start with why the nigga works so hard. The reason niggas is working so hard. And this, again, it's a little small limerick. It says, this is the way that was. God let down 2 bundles about 5 miles down the road, so the white man and the nigger raced to see who could get there first. Well, the nigger outrun the white man and grabbed the biggest bundle. He was so scared the white man would get it away from him, he fell on top of the bundle and hollered back, "Oh, I got here first and this biggest bundle is mine." The white man says, "All right, I'll take your leavings," and picked up the little teeny neechy bundle laying on the road. When the nigger opened up his bundle, he found a pick, a shovel, and a hoe, and a plow, and a chop axe. And then the white man opened up his bundle and found a writing pen and ink. So ever since then, the nigger been out in the hot sun using his tools, and the white man been sitting up figuring, oughts and out, figures a figure, all for the white man, none for the nigger.
Yeah,
if there is some truth just in a limerick, I mean,
yeah, I will say, Zora was definitely, I don't know, in her time, ahead of her time, around the time, if I could say that.
But these are
Because
folk tales she picked up from people.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think like LaDonna is relaying that the writings and teachings of our ancestors, of our elders, because not all of our, not all of the stories are dead with the people. So I mean, like, it is detrimental for you to know who and where you are, because not all people of my hue came from Africa. All of my majority of my people of my hue were enslaved. Majority of
Mm-hmm.
them were enslaved from this country, transferred to another country, then transferred to another country, then brought back to this country to do just what Perry read: work. That's it. That's it. And most, I don't know, most Negroes, niggas will, I don't know, we would, boldly say, oh, well, slavery never touched my family, and my family is, I'm the Cherokees, and I'm the, but the whole time you missing the gap of where the American slave actually come from. And it was those, I guess, non-civilized tribes of who I am that was considered to, to be pushed along to other places like the Caribbean, like Africa. So not all of America's slaves, Black American slaves, were from Africa. So I mean, like, they looped us all in the same bowl because of the hue we have, and it's frustrating that a lot of people, especially of this hue, will say, oh, well, no, that didn't go for us because I'm of this tribe, or I'm of that tribe, or I'm of this tribe. And here it is, majority current today, individuals are, going about different ways to find out what tribe they actually come from.
Mm-hmm.
And most of, and I will say again, most of the American indigenous aborigines of this country were shipped to other countries and other continents. So we have a long line of, you know, like Perry said, I'm gonna open my box and this is what you get. And you have to make do with what you got, especially at that particular time. So I'm ecstatic, man. Yeah.
All right, LaDonna, Terry.
I'm staying
I'm
out
just
of
taking
it
it
a
all
little bit
in.
more than
No, I mean, yeah, because again,
I mean,
to
for me,
have
I
that
feel
kind of
like,
concept and idea about the dynamics of how we looked at each other socially, and
well, I
them
was just about
saying
to
that
say,
the
I feel like
Negro, yeah,
that kind of speaks to our working twice as hard to get half as much, right? So to me, if I looked at that, that's what I would be thinking. I mean, I don't know, but I'm pretty sure the general consensus on this program is that whatever you do, 9 times out of 10, we have a fundamental consensus in our community that we're gonna have to do double or triple as much to get a fraction of what the other groups may be getting, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
So
Well,
that
that's a
kind
hard
of
that,
mentality.
yeah,
That's
contributes
a
to
hard
why I
mentality,
say,
though.
well, the poem kind of speaks to why the Negro is working so much. Um, First because we starting behind the line, and then when you get up to the line, the metric have changed.
yeah,
So now
yeah,
you got to do some more to get up
right,
to a fraction. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
That's it.
And
Maybe a
as
hard
well
mentality.
as we also and we didn't really get a chance to talk about slavery and really, I mean, again, we know that our history does not begin with slavery.
I was hoping that we
And,
would address that.
even though with the 1619 project, we also have to admit that really blacks first came here as explorers.
Right.
Esty Benicio, who discovered New Mexico and Arizona, was black. John Baptista Fabu even though he came after 16, these were black explorers. And then when you begin to look at the 1619 project, those people came in as indentured servants. They really weren't called slaves, even though they were treated harshly. And you'll begin to hear those who came from that Virginia, lineage. I mean, Frederick Douglass and those. I mean, their ancestors started as indentured servants, and yes, they got the poor treatment, and that's what they were dealing with. But in understanding also the history of America, see, here's what was going on. Okay, you had in 1619, in Virginia, the big crop there was cotton, tobacco, and it was more of an agricultural, push. Well, as the century changes and we get to more or less, the end of the 18th century going into the 19th century, now you have the cotton gin, and cotton becomes a predominant thing that America now, but it's in the South. But what was going on in the North was you had the immigrants from the Irish and the Greeks. They were coming in, and so the North was going more toward textile. The South was still more this agriculture, and as you'll see that Braxton in all these cases were nothing more than a tool.
Well, I was Perry, before we get back to America, I was hoping that we would have touched on, like you said, our history doesn't really start with slavery. And a lot of Africana people, when we go into the Africana diaspora, we got to remember that Aristotle and Socrates and Plato, they studied at the feet of the Egyptians, who are black. Okay, these are Africana people. And so when we talk about history, for me, I always want to go back to antiquity, because this is where you get the real foundation of us being royal and a people that is a civilized civilization that taught the entire rest of the world how to be what they are. And when we don't discuss those things, we get it twisted as to who we really are. The very first telecommunication device was Egyptian people speaking into the river. You could cup your hands and speak into the water, and it would carry a message downstream, right? This is like the first, we got to go all the way back to antiquity to really straighten it out. How some of the people that we consider the fathers and mothers of modern medicine and arts and all of these things, these people learned what they learned at the feet of Africana people, right? Yeah. Africana people being us, right? Still and all, even though we were ripped from our native lands, you know what I mean? We've got to start also teaching the real truth. Yeah. It's no coincidence that every modern technological advance was really engineered by African people or African distinct, a descent of African people. You know what I mean? Yeah. Somebody would argue that the light bulb was actually created by a black man. Somebody would argue that, modern medicine was really created by a black man. A lot of technological advances, because here in America, we were not considered as people. They did not get the credit that they were due. So when we start talking about Black History 365, we got to go way back. We got to come all the way forward. And then we got to break through the lies and the deception and the deceit to really get the message straight.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that is one of many. One, we don't know our history, but I can remember being in junior high school and sitting in world history and everybody trying to do something else and not trying to pay attention to world history. I even remember people in college not paying attention to world history and American history. From the 1600s, the 1400s up to, the 1800s. So we've been a part of our own detriment in that, because even though that wasn't really precise history, it was some history in which to gauge. And now we have people who can't even gauge history. I mean, and again, we look at the Bible, and some people who go so far and Bible along the Bible timeline that they refuse to see that there's a world timeline in which to gauge that. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, to talk about the story of Moses and Pharaoh without understanding the history of the pharaohs,
Right.
you only getting the Moses story and not a good one at that.
Hey, he preaching, y'all.
Amen. Boy, you got a word on the day on that one.
And so, I guess that's Terry Wilson Jr. coming out. That's that nigga coming out. But and eventually we'll get to David Walker, because David Walker begins to talk about all of this. I mean, it is one of the most well put together essays I've ever seen. But and let's do this last one by Zora Neale Hurston, because I think this one is even more profound than why the reason niggas is working so hard is the next one. Why the sister in black works hardest. Know what happened after God got through making the world and the varmints and the folks? He made up a great bundle and let it down in the middle of the road. Kind of sound like the previous one. It lay there for thousands of years. Then old Mrs. said to old Master, "Go pick up that box. I want to see what's in it." Old Master looked at the box, and it looked so heavy that he says to the nigga, "Go fetch me that big old box and there in the road." The nigga been stumbling over the box a long time, so he tell his wife, "Woman, go get that box." So the nigga woman, she run to get that box, she says. Always lack to open up a big box, because there's nearly always something good in great big boxes. So she run and grabbed a hold of the box and opened it, and it was full of hard work. That's the reason the sister in black works hardest than anybody else in the world. The white man tells the nigga to work, and he takes it and tells his wife. Very much like the old one. But man, does that ring true in some ways. You can't deny it.
I will say that is very profound. That is very profound, because in today's society we see some of the most strongest, hard-working, committed black females, or females period for that matter. I will say I've seen some very strong, hard-hitting females over the past 20 years, and I'm 42 next month. So I do wanna say, hey man, you preach it, man. And yeah, this is this is profound, bro.
Yeah, and these are the words of our ancestors. I mean, it's not me making it up. It's just there.
Yeah. I mean, you could even look at it on a single mother's side, or on a single mother's point, from a single mother's point of view. I'm not a single mother, but I am a product of a single mother. So, like, I see how hard African Americans, even if the man did, the woman had to, didn't have to. In most households, the woman was the glue to everything. The family, the man getting up, making sure he was, his clothes was nice and his belly was ready. Made sure that when he got home, he was, his belly was nice and his clothes was ready. So I mean, that's one of the strongest people I know right now. Is a black woman, the sister in black.
Man, that's something.
I'm just
Um,
gonna tell y'all right now. I wish I would have got up and got myself together, but I'm tired. And but I do got on black right now. I just want y'all to know that.
What that, what that has, what that has to do with the show?
I'm giving y'all a hard time.
Hey, no, I don't mind. I don't mind. This is for us to help educate
yeah,
ourselves, help educate our
Yeah,
listeners,
I've
help
always
educate
said
our
that the black
families.
woman was always the strongest person around that I
Oh
know.
yeah,
yeah, oh
So
yeah,
yeah,
always
and
have
and
been
and to today they are.
yeah,
till
You know,
today.
till
yeah.
today.
To the day, man, and that's a great segue into our next one. Tone, let's go with Elizabeth Keckley.
Okay.
Um, man, this is one of man, this is one of the man. You read this story, man.
And you didn't tell me you pulled that one out, man.
I if you've not, I mean, I've read miracles in the Bible, heard people talk about miracles, but man, to read this woman's story and to see God move in her life the way
Yeah.
He did, man, it is. Oh man, let I when I was getting ready to do this, let's start. Tony, it should say Elizabeth Keckley one. Look at the file names.
Okay, let me pull that up for you.
Yeah, it should. Let's go to the one behind. It should start with behind the scenes.
Okay.
Um,
It wasn't sent to me that way. That's what I.
yeah, I know. Yeah. But while Tony gets that ready, man, Elizabeth Keckley wrote her narrative and she titled it 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. Now, I know we all heard 12 Years a Slave, but man, this story here.
Are we talking about behind the scenes?
Yeah, behind the scenes, or 30 Years a Slave. Elizabeth Keckley was born, and I'll just give you a brief one. She was born to slavery. She learned sewing from her mother. Became a modiste, which is a seamstress. Man, she endured some really tough times during slavery and was able, because she was such a great seamstress. She ended up buying her freedom and her son's freedom. After doing so, she became so well known in the Washington circle that she became the seamstress for Mary Todd Lincoln, and in fact became a close confidant of Mary Todd Lincoln. And Mary Todd Lincoln gets in trouble with her, and over Mary Todd Lincoln, they called it a scandal back then. Mary Todd Lincoln was trying to raise money for an initiative. She knew Elizabeth Keckley's dresses and her designs would sell, so Mary Todd Lincoln, being the white woman that she was, thought she can go to New York and nobody would notice the first lady. And the first lady was there shilling clothes. And it made a big scandal. Because why are you in New York trying to steal clothes and everything else? And it made it look like a scandal. And people talk bad about Mary Todd Lincoln. And Elizabeth Keckley in this. All of these things were coming together. Elizabeth Keckley was very good friends with Frederick Douglass and William Garner Harrison. And so, these were the people that she hung with. And this came about, and she said she was never going to speak of it. But because it became an issue, she felt like she had to defend Mary Todd Lincoln in some way, and at the same time set the record straight about slavery. Because, I mean, she was very much in the sense of what you call a diva. She was very much a diva. She took care of business.
I will really say this is one of the first divas I've ever identified in my life. Ever. And I'm not talking about the diva of today. where you got
Right.
ice heels and all that. I'm talking about the real diva that actually raised communities. You know,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is who we're talking about.
Yeah. She starts off her piece by saying, "I've often been asked to write my life, as those who know me know that it has been an eventful one." Um, she goes on to say, "If I have portrayed the dark side of slavery, I have also painted the bright side. The good that I have said of human servitude should be thrown into the scales with the evil that I have said of it. I have kind, true-hearted friends in the South as well as in the North, and I would not wound those Southern friends by sweeping condemnation simply because I was once a slave." And man, that takes a real spiritual shift in one's character and soul to really, come to that conclusion. And though it may sound sort of passive, it's really very strong once you begin to know who Elizabeth Crackley is, because at one point she said she wouldn't forgive me. you know. But man, it starts out. She talks about when she was born. Tony, if you can go to that one, it has a chapter when it was born. She starts out by saying she really, her first recollections of life was when she was about 4 years old. That's when you kind of. But check this out. She was saying she couldn't really recall much. She knew that her master, he was like most guys at that time. He was trying to play big and really couldn't afford the slaves that he had. And a lot of the times slaves became his way of paying debt. And because of that, I mean, you'll find out that becomes a part of her life. But she says at about 4 years old, the mistress had a baby. And she had gone to this, what she called the Hardy School. And she says, they taught me to rely upon myself and to prepare myself to render assistance to others. She said the lessons was not a bitter one, for I was too young to indulge in philosophy and the precepts that then treasured and practiced, I believed, and developed into principles of character, which have enabled me to triumph to this day. Notwithstanding all the wrongs that slavery heaped upon me, I can bless it for one thing: youth's important lesson of self-reliance. And so when you think about this, she was in the school as a toddler, being trained how to take care of a mistress. And she tells the story that when Mistress had this baby, she kind of looked at it as a pet. And the old ladies who had, the old maids and those who had nurtured her began to teach her how to take care of this baby. And one day, she's rocking this baby and the baby falls out of her lap. She screams, nobody comes. She picks up a shovel that they use to shovel out the fireplace, and that's when the mistress comes in, and she hollers, tells her to stop, and the mistress demands that she catches a whooping. Not just a whooping. Let me not say a whooping. The mistress demanded that she get a harsh punishment. And she says, go ahead. She said the blows were not administered with a light hand, I assure you. And doubtless the severity of the lashing has made me remember that incident so well to this day. This was the first time I was punished in this cruel way, but not the last. At 4, And then she goes on, and so at about 18, man, it's really crazy. The master sends her to one of his son's house. His son is a minister. His son is married, but she was really bequeathed to the daughter. And man, it's crazy, isn't it? To find out that your life is really connected to somebody else's life. You have no say-so whatsoever. But while she was waiting for her mistress, which was the old master's daughter, to get married, and it was taking her a long time, the old master sent it to his son to help him out. And man, this is a great. This here, she talks about how the son's wife really didn't like her, and so they had a schoolmaster, and she concocted with the schoolmaster to have the schoolmaster take care of her. And this is a long part, but y'all, I mean, you got to hear it because this is wow. So let me see. Yeah, so the schoolmaster, his name is Mr. Bingham. He said it was Saturday evening, and while I was bending over the bed watching the baby that I had just hushed to slumber, Mr. Bingham came to the door and asked me to go with him to his study. Wondering what he meant by his strange request, I followed him. And when he entered the study, he closed the door to his blunt way, remarked, "Lizzie, I'm going to flog you." I was thunderstruck and tried to think if I had been remiss in anything. I could not recollect of anything I had done, and with surprise exclaims, "Whip me, Mr. Ben, for what?" "No matter. I'm going to whip you. So take that dress down this instant." I was 18 years of age, was a woman fully developed, and yet this man coolly bade me to take down my dress. I drew myself up proudly, firmly, and said, "No, Mr. Bingham, I shall not take down my dress before you. Moreover, you shall not whip me unless you prove the stronger. Nobody has a right to whip me but my master, and nobody shall do if I can prevent." I won't even go on, man. Elizabeth Keckley whooped this man's ass.
Indeed.
She did. He came back. And they fought. And man, I can't, because I was reading this earlier today to my granddaughter, telling this story to her, man. I mean, it will really just make you cry, but it got so bad. And here's where, I mean, here's the power of the Lord really coming into life. She said on this last fight, she said, "We struggled, and he struck me many savage blows. As I stood bleeding before him, nearly exhausted with his efforts, he burst into tears and declared that it would be a sin to beat me anymore." Now that sounds good, but then he said, "My suffering at last subdued his hard heart. He asked my forgiveness, and afterwards an altered man. He was never known to strike any one of his servants from that day forward. Mr. Burwell, who preached the love of heaven," now this is her master, Mr. Burwell, who preached the love of heaven, who glorified the precepts and examples of Christ, who expounded the Holy Scriptures on the Sabbath, after Sabbath from the pulpit, when Mr. Bingham refused to whip me anymore, little Joel was urged by Victoria to punish me himself. One morning, he went to the woodpile, took an oak broom, cut the handle, and with his heavy handle attempted to conquer me. This was the preacher, her master. His wife told him after the other man gave up beating on her, said he'd forgive her. His wife made him beat her, and now here he is, the preacher, beating him. And he beat her so bad, she said, "I will not dwell upon the bitter anguish of those hours, for even the thought of them now make me shudder." At the sight of my bleeding form, the wife fell upon her knees and begged him to desist. My distress even touched her cold, jealous heart.
Well, Perry, we've got our time is up. Our time is up,
Man,
and I appreciate you leading us through this. It takes so much. We have so much history, so
Yeah.
many stories, folk tales, and this is the reason why I produced this page on Facebook called Knowledge is Power Podcast. Uh, Black Culture
Yeah.
365 because
Too long.
it takes more than a month to go through our history.
Yeah, this is the kind of history that needs to be taught in school.
Right,
I
right,
think if
Yeah.
we
right,
taught the
right,
kids like what Perry was just talking about in
right.
school,
So,
I don't think we would have the violence that we have right now
right,
toward each
right,
other. We
right.
do it.
So,
We do that because we don't know our history of
right,
what
we
all we
don't know
went
our
through.
history, what we went
Unlike
through.
my great uncle, he was one of the first people to vote in Louisiana. And once he got registered to vote, they put out his address so people could go to his house and do things to his house just because he was one of the first blacks to vote in
Right.
Louisiana.
yeah,
You
Let me
know,
leave you
it's just,
guys. Let me leave you guys with this. This is it's history. Every day is history. We're gonna continue to do what we do to increase our volume of folks to share our rich heritage of Black history every day of the year, 365. Before we close, let me just ad lib this. Today we look at the miseducation of the American Negro. Let me reinstate that the fact that the Africans that was captured and enslaved were not wild, barefoot, ungodly, illiterate creatures.
Correct.
No, we wasn't. Upon
yeah,
being captured, former kings, queens, warriors, craftsmen, architects, astrologers. Did I say that right?
Astrology.
Astrologers. Yes,
astrologers.
okay,
Astrologist.
that's right. Psychologists, uh, artists, designers, traders, farmers, scientists was beaten down into a submission of illiteracy. For survival, we neglected. We they was negated that what they knew. All right. Slave master knew that their control of slaves would require much more than just physical retribution. Therefore, to keep the slaves completely under their control, to keep the slaves totally dependent on them, slave states made it illegal for slaves to read, write, or understand the concept of money. After the slave revolt led by Nate Turner in 1831, all slave states except for Maryland, Kentucky, Tennessee passed laws against the teaching of slaves to read and write. Slave owners feared that literacy among the slaves would confuse and frustrate slaves. A thinking slave is not a happy slave and could become a dead slave. States such as North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Virginia, Texas, Louisiana adopted the Alabama Slave Code of 1833, where it was declared that any person who shall attempt to teach any free person of color or a slave to spell, read, write, or handle money to be convicted and fined for the sum of no less than $250, $100, and no more than $500. The slave that was caught reading, writing, having money on them could be beaten severely, scarred, maimed, or suffer any amputation of either their fingers, their hands, their arms, or foot, could also be sold away from their families or killed, all just for reading or writing. Yes, they were slaves who secretly knew how to read and write, But out of fear of being discovered, they played the role of not knowing, doing whatever in order to survive. Slave owners also manipulated biblical scriptures such as Bible, obey your masters, from Ephesians 6:5, to convince slaves that even God meant for them to be slaves and what was being done to them was right. Hey guys, you got to excuse me, but just writing this makes a person feel like, Lord have mercy.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't get to talk about David Walker, because David Walker addresses that head on in his appeal. And what I will say, one thing I did learn, even though our tribes, the tribes in Africa, spoke different languages, Creole was the language of commerce and trade that they commonly spoke. So that is why Creole became that common language. But if you understand, as they say, when America was dealing with indentured servants, see, it was a zero-sum total. When the indentured servant paid off his time, the master was back at ground one. So therein led to chattel slavery, which then eliminated the whole process of you really buying your freedom. And thus, also a part of chattel slavery is that you find out in the diaspora, it wasn't just a matter of taking away their language. They began to do more of a psychological warfare and tell them that they had no past. So when you figured that your past, and that became the custom, because when you see, and David Walker begins to talk about it, there was no other civilization where slavery was a part of it, and slavery has been a part since time, and Walker goes through it. But what you find out with American Christian white was they were supposed to be more enlightened. And so how is it that a more enlightened people become so much more barbaric? And they were much more barbaric. Probably not more than the Portuguese, but then you see the whole reason why South America is in the position that it's in, and Walker talks about that, because they are at, even then, he says, the Spaniards are constantly at each other's necks, right, because their government is from the people and they can't trust their government. And that is why, you say they're steady hollering peace, but they're at each other's throat, cutting each other's throat. He says God would never get in the middle of that chaos. And he says that then. And that is what we see now in Guatemala, Honduras, that whole thing. And so this isn't new. Our ancestors have been telling us these things have been existing and evolving, correct, even to this day.
Correct. Well, that's a wrap. We're wrapping it up right now, guys. Thank you. Appreciate you. And everyone here that's watching, listening to Panelist podcast. We want to make sure you go out and vote on Tuesday. I think somebody's trying to get my attention in my headset. If I hear someone in my headsets,
that's just me saying, don't forget about voting.
Yeah, go ahead.
We want to make sure that you get out and vote. It's not enough for us to come on and talk about history. We've got to be creating history as we go. We need to show up at the polls March 1st, Tuesday, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And one more little plug. The 100 plus Black women are having their scholarship banquet and awards March 26th. Tickets are $45. And that's it, Tony. Go ahead.
Hey, guys. Hey, it's it. Thank you again. We have a next show on Tuesday. I'm not sure. March the 1st. Let us know. Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. We appreciate you. Thank you, Perry Busby III. We appreciate you guys. And
appreciate it.
We're going to continue to do this. And
great show, Perry.
Thank you.
We ask you all to, if you're listening, to please join us on our Facebook page, Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. No, that's not it. It's Knowledge is Power Podcast Black Culture Page 365. Thank you again, everybody. We love you, and we'll see you the next time.
Thank you for watching Knowledge is Power Podcast Live. sure to like and subscribe to all Knowledge is Power social media pages.